Hello and welcome back to Small Soldier and part 4 and the final part of our How to Paint Figures in Oil video. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell notification below, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment. So sit back and relax because it's all coming up right after this. Hello everyone, welcome to part 4 of my figure painting demo. In this video I'll go over painting the jacket, cap, and the trousers. If you guys have any questions regarding the video so far, if there's anything else you need to know regarding painting techniques or any kind of tips or color mixes, please leave a comment below. I do read all of them and respond to each and every one. When painting the shadows on the cap, I generally will use indigo or Payne's gray to paint in the shadows, and I will thin it back with some thinner just to make it a little more brushable, and then put that into the shadowed area and blend. So it's not really a wash, but it's thinner than the thick oil paint. It just helps it dry faster as well. Another thing you want to do while you're painting your figure is to always inspect it. Take it, turn it around, look at it at all angles, just to make sure you're getting enough contrast and light and shadow in there. You may have noticed that the techniques I'm using here are very similar to the hands and face. The only difference being that now you're trying to replicate clothing or accessories. After dipping your brush in just a hint of thinner, you'll want to dry that brush off to remove some of the thinner out of the bristles. The glove actually is a good indicator for that. It'll help you see exactly how much thinner you have left in those bristles, and this just helps aid in the blending process. Here I'm adding highlights back into the cap. These can get lost in the shading process, and you just want to go back in and punch those up a little bit just so you can see the contrast and how far you have to go from that point. Here I'm mixing up the paint for the coat. I'll be mixing in various shades of shadow and highlight. The colors used for the highlights are titanium white and Naples yellow light. And you'll want at least 3 highlight shades. I don't have any set percentage that I do when I'm mixing up the colors for the highlights. I just try to get 3 distinct shades. I'm using quinacridone rose to mix into the Prussian blue to get the dark shades. You can use any dark red or bright red depending on what you're going for. This color in particular helps really deepen those shadow colors. Like I said previously, I like to work all my dark shadow colors first before I go into highlights. It doesn't really matter if you go from shadow to highlight or just do all your darks and then your lights next. It's just the particular way I like to do things. Don't forget to use your pre-shading as a guide for placing all your shadows and highlights. Just a note to remind you that the oil paint I'm putting on is going over an acrylic base coat. The method I used to use was a wet and wet technique. I would put the base color on and then add my shadows and highlight. With this method I found it too hard to control the amount of paint I was putting on the figure, and things got away on me fairly quickly, and I found I would end up with way too much paint buildup and a soupy, messy quagmire.
Oh, giggity, 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 goo.
Here I'm adding the darkest shadows. These will only be added to the deepest areas in the creases. At this stage, you should really start to see a lot of volume being created from the shadows you've laid in. I keep building these shadows up until I'm satisfied where I'm kind of wanting things to go. And then at that stage, I will switch over to highlighting. Always add shadows to areas where you think people won't actually see. The reason I do this is for two reasons. It may look like you've missed an area if somebody's looking lower down on the figure. Also, light can reflect funny off those unpainted areas and cast strange shadows or highlights into areas that you don't want it to go. Now that I've established my shadows and it's had a couple days to dry, I go in and start with my first set of highlights. Again, follow your pre-shading that you did with the airbrush, and this will help guide you with the highlights as well. Here's an example of where I thought the light should be pushed a little further yet, so I'm going back in and reworking some of those areas because I find the contrast wasn't quite enough. After this is all dried, I'll go back in again with a darker shade and I'll push those shadows even further. The paint I'm using here is thin just a little more than I would normally, and it becomes more of a glaze at this point as opposed to a thicker paint that I would blend with. Most of the shadows I'm adding at this stage are going to be added to the deepest parts of the folds. Sorry if you're having trouble seeing what I'm doing here. This is about as close as I could get because of the camera and the glasses I was wearing. They were kind of clashing. Replicating patterns in clothing is just a matter of finding the right consistency in the paint and practice, really. There's no magic formula that I've found anyway. Of course, good reference photos always help. If you're doing plaid or any type of pattern, having a good reference photo will help you establish where to lay those colors in and exactly how to layer them. The pants are done exactly the same as the jacket. You're just going in again and layering those colors and pushing and pulling the shadows and highlights. The final highlights are added to the areas that protrude the most on the folds. Remember to just add the minimal amount of paint here. You just want to push those highlights just a little further forward. A little tip here, remember when you're painting gold or silver to undercoat those areas in white. It'll just help those areas pop more and be a little brighter.
Move your head! Heed! Move!
When using the non-metallic method for painting, all you're really doing is eliminating the metallic paints themselves and trying to replicate that sheen and highlight in regular paint colors that will emulate that metal look. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and thank you to all my subscribers, old and new. If it wasn't for you guys, I guess I wouldn't be making these videos. I have a lot more fun stuff coming your way in the new year, so stick around. And on that note, I hope you guys had a fantastic Christmas, and you all have an even better new year. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.